We're going to cover something today that is part of your life. Everybody turn to someone and say, this is life.
This is life.
If you are going to be a leader, you are going to have to make unpopular, misunderstood, despised decisions. Just wanted to encourage you. There are a lot of people that will never become leaders, even though they're called to be leaders. It's because they want to be liked more than they want to lead. And once you realize that that's not going to be an option for you, if you are truly going to be a leader, you are going to have to learn how to become unpopular. You're going to have to learn how to be misunderstood. Managing your emotions when you are misunderstood, lied about. You're going to have to learn how to make decisions that everyone dislikes and disagrees with, but you know that they have to be made to move forward. If you are unwilling to do that, then I simply want you to recognize that you're never going to be able to lead. I know a lot of people in this boat, and they are genuinely good people, genuinely have a call on their life, but they want to be liked more than they want to lead. And I want you to know that if you continue with that mindset, that even as a young person, you're never going to mature into who God has called you to be. Because to truly be a successful leader means you must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to become unpopular. And you must be willing to be despised for your choices that you make as a leader by people that you are leading. I remember one day I was walking and I found there was this woman there with a child screaming. Anybody have been near somebody with a child screaming? No, I'm not talking like a baby. I'm talking like a 10-year-old screaming, dancing, just a horrific scene. And so I looked at the mother, and I knew the mother was embarrassed, and I knew them. So I talked to them later, and I said to the mother, I said, why did you allow your child to do that? And I said, why didn't you discipline? And she let me know she doesn't discipline her child. And I said, why don't you discipline your child? And her position was this. She wanted her child to always be able to come to her for any situation. So therefore, she wanted to be more a friend to her child than actually the parent. And I want you to realize that your children do not need you to be their friend. They need you to be their parent. The people that you are leading don't need you to be their friend. They need you to be their leader. I remember my children telling me, I remember the first time my son Chad said he hated me. I remember that. He said it with very strong conviction too. And I remember how I took it to heart. But I remember telling him and his siblings, I don't care if you hate me. I'm not here for you to like me. You'll love me someday. But right now, my job is to get you to do what you're told. My job was to be their parent. My job was to be their leader. And if I want to have people like me all the time, you can't lead properly. And this is where a struggle that a lot of people have. Leadership demands hard conversations. And it demands that there are going to be people that are sitting under you that are going to look at you and not like you because of the conversations you have to have with them. It is one of the harder things for people who are an I in the disc. We like to be liked. I like to be liked. I like that everybody's smiling with me, happy with me. My problem with that is, now you know that's you when you have a hard time sleeping after you find out somebody's mad at you and you don't even know why they're mad at you. Truthfully, I had to overcome some things. I had to overcome the fact that I really didn't care what people thought about me. Now that's still a challenge for me. That still challenges me because I want people to like me. I can't understand why people don't like me. I've had people say they hated me and they've never even met me. That bothers me. Why? Well, because I like to be liked. But the problem with that is, if you like to be liked more than you like to be a leader, you can't be a leader. Because not being liked is part of being a true leader. Because not everyone's going to like you. Now, on the opposite spectrum are those that don't care if they're liked. That is another dangerous perspective. Well, I don't care what anybody thinks about. I don't like people anyways. That's a problem. Because that means that you become a slaughter machine. You just set people up and you don't care what they feel. You don't care what they think. You just you shoot them all in their spot. I want you to realize that both are bad extremes. One needs to love people more through showing the love. One needs to love people more by becoming a little bit more aggressive. So in this, we've got to learn how to make and have hard decisions and hard statements and hard conversations, yet still know that you love people, but yet truthfully know that some of them are going to dislike you, just the way it is. Probably the greatest person and example of this, of course, is Jesus. Jesus, he led Peter. How many of you know Peter had an issue? We called it not foot-mouth disease, but knee-mouth disease. He had his foot down his mouth more times than you could count. And Jesus did not mind addressing those. Now, how many of you know Jesus is love? Yeah. God said, I am love. So we know that love in and of itself is one that, as a leader, he's going to direct him to the best way that he can to bring him to the highest level of of success possible. So here we have Peter. Jesus knew that Peter was going to be the one that was going to preach the very first message. In fact, I don't know about you, he was the keynote speaker for the very first church that was ever preached. He stood up on the day of Pentecost, preached the gospel. That day, 3,000 men gave their hearts to Jesus Christ, not including women and children. But before Peter ever got there, Peter was following Jesus for 3 years. He was what? Following Jesus. Jesus said to him, what? Come and follow me. So if you are a follower, that means you have a leader, which means if the leader truly loves you, they're going to put you in positions that are not always comfortable for you because they see the potential that is inside of you. And the only way to get the potential inside of you is to correct the bad things out of you, which means it's not always an easy conversation. So here we know Jesus. Jesus is talking to Peter in Mark chapter 8. Jesus said, who do men say that I am? And Peter stood up with great boldness. As we know, he was a bold man, outspoken. And he said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now I want you to see this now. That's Mark 8, 27 and 29. Go to Mark 8, 31 through 33. And Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and after the third day rise again. And he spoke this word openly. Then Peter, now watch what verse we're in. We're in verse 32. In verse 29, he said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Verse 32, he says this. Verse 33. 32. There we go. Then he spoke to him openly, and then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. So Peter begins to rebuke Jesus. And when he had turned, he looked at the disciple and he said, he rebuked Peter, saying, get thee behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of man. So literally, Jesus was praising him because thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, saying the right things, doing the right things. 3 verses later, he's openly rebuking him and calling him Satan. Now, I don't know about you. That's a hard conversation. I've had to tell people before, you're out of place. You're out of line. And they look at me and they twist their head and they foam at the mouth and they usually leave. Amazing, isn't it? I have never called anybody Satan. Now, I didn't say I haven't thought that they were Satan. But I've never called anybody Satan. Jesus called Peter Satan. He said, Satan, get thee behind me. But yet Peter learned and submitted and sat under a leader, a hard conversation. This, I don't know about you, but Peter now, I want to remind you who Peter was. Peter was a successful businessman. He was not just some Joe Schmo sitting throwing out a one-line fishing line, hoping he was going to catch a trout so he could fix his family supper. This is a man, according to history, had at least 3 mid-sized ships. Not rowboats, ships. We know that according to later on in Scripture, he was such a successful man that when Jesus had died, and in that time he went back to his business, and Christ showed up on the thing and said, cast your net to the other side, come on now, that he brought in so much that it began to break his nets, and he had to call one of the other ships to come out and help him. He was a successful businessman. Who are you to tell me what to do? I know how to be successful. I know how to handle this stuff. I know what to do. I know what to accomplish. But Jesus had a hard conversation with him. And I want you to realize Peter had a choice at that point in time. He had a choice to look at Christ and accept what he was willing, accept what was being taught in the hard conversation and the hard statements. He had the opportunity to misunderstand Jesus and say he didn't love me, he didn't care about me. He had the opportunity to get grudgeful and to hold a grudge against Christ for saying, Satan, get thee behind me. Or he had the opportunity to actually listen, be formed and conform, and be propelled into his next level destiny. So every single time that you are a leader, your goal is to get people to follow you. Remember, it's an old statement. People who say they're a leader but have no followers are just going out for a walk. So if you have followers, you're not just having followers because you want followers. You have followers because you love them. You have people around you because you love them. You want to invest in them. And whether that's church or whether that's business, it's still the same principle. You learn to love and you grow a love relationship, a family relationship with the people you're working closest with. And the amazing part is there are always people that are in that group that you know have phenomenal potential. But just because somebody has phenomenal potential does not mean they'll ever reach that potential. And the challenge of a great leader, a good leader, is one to see the potential. It's one thing to see, but the next thing is to draw that out of them so that they will rise to the occasion. They will rise to the new plateau, the new position to where God has for them, whether it be business or whether it be ministry. Your goal is to get them to reach the highest level of potential that their purpose for being on this planet. That is the goal of every leader. Remember, your success is making somebody else successful. You can have all the money in the world, but without people coming up behind you, what do you actually have? So this is the constant battle that we have. The challenge in that is getting followers that are going to respond in a proper dimension when you have to have a hard conversation with them, when you have to say something that is somewhat aggressive, when you have to deal with issues that are not comfortable. And you see, we all have issues that are not comfortable. As you know, I've been doing I went out and got certified to do the DISC and to do the EQ and to do, I just learned of a new assessment yesterday that I took yesterday. I'm waiting to be debriefed on it. But it's amazing when I'm looking at all these assessments that I get uncomfortable reading my own assessment. Well, why is that? Because part of the assessment is you got to fix this, this, and this. Well, who wants to be told they got to fix anything? We all want to think we're in pretty good shape. The fact is that Peter thought he was in good shape. But Jesus made an aggressive declaration to him that he easily could have been extremely unpopular for. Can you imagine if Peter had copped an attitude? I'm sure he did cop an attitude, but can you imagine if he copped an attitude to the position where he actually walked away from Christ and went back to his boat? I can't tell you how many people I've watched cop an attitude and go back to their boat when they're supposed to be preaching the first sermon of the church. It's amazing to me how many I have watched over 32 years of ministry that have a genuine, bona fide touch of God on their life to do specific things as leaders, but they will never rise to that position because of an unpopular statement that was made, because they misunderstood a statement that was made. Somebody recently said to me, well, I stopped coming to the church. I said, well, I can see you're not there. And I said, well, why aren't you there? And they said, well, you said this to me. And I said, but that's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. Oh, well, I just assumed that's what you meant. Well, assumption does what? Don't say it out loud. Because the point is that people don't mind misunderstanding, especially if it's an uncomfortable moment. Or especially if it suits their purposes. My wife and I bought a house at one point in time, and I remember standing in the driveway. I actually had this conversation 2 days ago. Standing in the driveway of the house we had just purchased. And in the driveway, the lady had said to me, one of the deals was that they were going to change out the liner in the pool because it was a bad liner. That was $4,000. And I remember her telling me 3 times, yeah, we're going to take care of that liner. We're going to take care of that liner. We're going to take care. I can tell you exactly where I stand. I stand right in front of the garage, in the driveway, and looked and says, don't worry about it. Well, I knew what I meant. I meant, don't tell me one more time about the liner that needs to be fixed. I understand it. She took it as, don't worry about the liner. So at closing, we're at closing, and all of a sudden, they said, and the liner is no longer included. Well, that's $4,000, and the reason we bought that house is there's a pool. Now, not that I swim in the pool. I actually spent maybe 15 seconds in the pool this year because my son Cody picked me up and body slammed me. Other than that, I'm not in the pool. So they said to me, I had a question. We actually had a sinkhole this weekend. I've never seen a sinkhole before. We had a sinkhole open up. I almost went through it with the lawnmower. And it was a 5-foot by 5-foot sinkhole that went 5 foot deep. There's, what do they call that? There's concrete blocks in the bottom, and then there's pylons and stuff like that. I'm saying, that's really interesting. Well, anyways, almost went through. So I texted the past owners and said, what is this? And they said, it's pretty brazen that you would ask us since you strong-armed us at closing over the pool liner. And I said, that's not what happened at the thing at all. But you see, people misunderstood. And she said to me, I didn't chuckle because it bothered me a little. I said to the lawyer, there's a special place for preachers who lie like he does. Isn't that amazing?
Meanwhile, you just fell on their old septic tank.
Yeah, I fell. Literally, though, if I put my foot in, I'd have gone through. It's amazing to me, though, honestly, about being misunderstood. How many of you have ever been misunderstood before? Yeah. I mean, you said something and you were clear. You knew what you were saying, but they did not take it that way at all. Listen, misunderstandings are part of being a leader. And people are going to hate you for what they don't understand. I'm talking hate you. I have people that have left this church that hate me. They don't dislike me. They hate me. They've gone on crusades against me. I'm talking crusades. And you know what? I have to be okay with that. I didn't say it was easy, but you're going to get that. And if you're going to abandon ship and leave your leadership potential because somebody misunderstands you, well, you might as well give up before you ever start. Brother Henry, has anybody ever misunderstood you in your business before? Never. How many years have you been in business?
I'm only 29 years old.
About
30 years, I guess.
30 years in this business. Have you been misunderstood once?
At least once a day.
Twice? 20 times?
Yes.
Have you ever had anybody hate you because of it? Yes. Jay, how many years you been in business?
Oh, I've probably 20-ish.
20-ish. You've ever been misunderstood?
I wish I knew how many times I've actually. Because a lot of times you don't even know.
You don't even know.
You never hear about it. Or you hear about it years later, like, oh my gosh.
Has anybody ever hated you?
No, definitely not. Oh, yeah.
He said that in faith. Has anybody ever corrected you who was a leader and you misunderstood them?
Yeah, for sure.
You thought they were just being mean.
Yep.
I'm talking like seriously. There comes a place that I've watched a lot of leaders abandon their potential because they're afraid that people will misunderstand them and not like them and to become unpopular. We had a basketball coach when I was a child in third grade, Mr. McLaren. He was an intense man. Third graders now. He would throw his clipboards at you. He was mean, wasn't he? We won the championship that year. Yeah, I never got hit. I ducked. All I know is this. He got fired. He got fired. The parents were so mad. He'd cuss at you, swear at you. He'd be in your face and sweat be flying all over the place. And man, the students, I remember as a basketball, I was scared of him. But at the same time, we produced. Baby, we went all the way to the top. But he got his butt fired. Why? Because he became very unpopular with the parents. You are going to learn, if you are going to be a leader for any period of time, that you are going to run into this scenario, and it is not going to be abnormal. It will be a normal process in your life. Now, how about Jesus? He was misunderstood, and to the point where Peter had to submit himself again. How about the time when Jesus was getting ready to wash the feet? Now, I want to remind you that Jesus first went and washed whose feet? He washed Judas's feet. And he already knew that Satan had possessed him and that he was going to go and sell him out. He then went to Peter. And he said, John 13, 6-9. And he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? And Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing, you do not understand now, but you will know after this. So he will not what? Understand. Misunderstandings. Jesus answered, and Peter said, you will never wash my feet. And Jesus said, if I do not wash your feet, you have no part of me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. The interesting part about this is that Jesus could have made Peter and just say, okay, but instead he told him that if he didn't wash his feet, that he'd have no place. Why is that? Every good leader sees your potential and is trying to teach you the principles that are going to accelerate you into your leadership skills. Sometimes it's just sheer servanthood. Jesus was showing service by getting on his hands and knees and doing what only a servant would do and wash the feet of his disciples. He didn't, Peter said, wash my whole body. Jesus said, I don't need to wash your whole body, to go take a shower. But he washed his feet because he was showing servanthood. Because Peter had a problem with servanthood. In fact, we see that he struggled because he was such a strong leader, even submitting at times. Here, Jesus is teaching him the principles. The why of why you'll be misunderstood many times is why you walk away from your leader. Every leader truly wants to see you accelerate. So, Kevin, when you were leading up at Houghton in your department, did you see students that you knew had great potential?
Oh, yeah.
And you saw that they had things that if they didn't work through, they would never be able to reach it.
Absolutely.
And so what did you do with them?
Those students? Like those particular ones?
Yeah.
I kept trying to build into them, but it comes to a point where at times they'll either get on the track or they'll just keep going down the road they're going on. So you either pour in or you just have to cut them off eventually.
And at times you do. How many times you ever had to cut somebody off from, you knew their potential, but you knew they'd never reach it under you? You've all had times? Pastor Cody, have you ever had people, young people? Anybody else? Yes? Pastor Obi? It's sad. But you got to know the because. A true leader, have you ever been told to do something because?
No.
I hated when my parents said that to me. Because. But why? Because. Yeah, you don't always have the privilege of explaining the cause. Yes.
My mom always gave us a reason
Your mom always gave you a reason why? Well, she was a better woman than I was. Cuz, let me tell you. Sometimes it's just cuz. Well, why is that? Because I need you to learn how to respond because I see the potential in you, but you can't reach that potential if you're not going to respond. A true leader does what they do because they want to see you accelerate. But those are the moments that it's the easiest to become unpopular. Those are the moments it's the easiest to be misunderstood. Those are the moments that people think, oh, you're just being mean to me. Or you picked me out. Oh, you just don't like me because you see I can become better than you. Well, yeah, exactly. I want you to be better than me. That's why I'm spending a little extra time and trying to work these things out of your life. Jesus saw who Peter was and what he was called to accomplish. In fact, he proved it by speaking in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overpower it. Jesus saw what Peter was called to be. But if Peter had misunderstood, had copped an attitude, had been offended by his leader, he would never have preached the very first message. As a leader, this is something that's going to happen to you. And it should break your heart. If it doesn't break your heart, if it doesn't make you upset a little bit, then you need to go back. You're probably on the wrong end of the pendulum. It should bother you to some capacity. But you still have to make a decision that even though at times you are going to be very unpopular, you are going to work overtime whether you like it or not. You are going to go do this whether you like it or not. That makes you unpopular. When you start cutting into other people's freedoms, unpopular. But guess what? It's to build them to who they're actually supposed to become. If Jesus had never rebuked Peter for saying the statements he did, then Peter would never have been able to receive it from Paul when Paul rebuked him in the book of Galatians. Every single time we're in the position of becoming unpopular, it's usually or should be because we're trying to help people. Especially when you're misunderstood. Now, I don't care. You can explain it till you're blue in the face. But if they don't want to rise to the occasion, they don't want to simply learn, then you will be misunderstood. You will become the enemy. They will villainize you, and they will talk badly about you. And you have got to be willing to be okay with that. I think that's one of the most difficult things because we all want to please people. But you can't be a man pleaser. You got to be a God pleaser. And you got to be a good leader. You got to care enough about people to have them hate you. Yes.
So I got to think how I want to ask this.
A little bit louder, please.
At what point do you cut somebody off? It's the whole good to great theory. You have so many people in your circle looking at you for guidance, and if they don't want to do it or you can't make them, like I'm really starting to see there's just some people you're just not gonna, it's that you're pushing a chain. It's just not gonna happen. Or you're, in the good to great theory where you're not gonna take a 5'5" guy and make him a star basketball player. You know what I mean? He's just not gonna be NBA. So at what point do you not invest? Or how do you choose that?
I love that question, and I actually have an answer for you. I'm rushing to it right now.
Okay. Because there's just not enough time in the day to invest in everyone.
There is not.
It's very difficult to choose that, and others sometimes feel left out, even though they're just never going to probably perform. So just invest your time in somebody that's already good and make them great, rather than somebody that's not even good and trying to make them good.
Here's 25 people you can't help. People who don't think they have a problem. People who don't think you are the problem. Or people who think you are the problem. People who think they know it all. People who think they're smarter than you. People who do not believe in possibilities. People who refuse to take responsibility for their own outcomes. People who insist on maintaining a negative outlook on life. People who refuse to pay the price success demands. People who do not need others. People who draw their identity from their problems. People who are great starters but don't follow through. People who live in self-deception. People who will not help themselves. People who do not believe that change is possible. People who refuse to have a vision for their future. People who remain willfully ignorant. People who won't accept change. People who think their kids are perfect. People who are stuck in their yesterday. People who are unteachable. People who always receive feedback as criticism. People who use their kids, mess up, family, boss, etc. as an excuse. I could succeed if they were not in my life. People who are always playing the victim. People who are plunged into learning hopelessness. I cannot change, so why even try? People who read this list and because of self-deception think it's none of them. I make this decision in my life. I'm an investor. Everybody in this room is an investor. I invest, even at times, I'm a long-term investor. I'll say it that way off the bat. I'm a long-term investor. I'm willing to invest long-term in somebody, even if I see small gains. But there does come a decision after years where if there are no gains, you can't keep putting money in the bank. Now, there are people that after years, all of a sudden, you'll start seeing the exchange, the investment, and all of a sudden it's turned, and now you're starting to see the flow. Take Corning. Corning was split 3 times, doing phenomenal, then dropped out the bottom. I think the lowest was, 114, 120-ish, or something in that vicinity. A share. I sold at 9-something a share. My son sold at, do you remember what you sold at? At 13 a share. And man, it took a long, now it's at, I think 30-something a share. So it's now long-term starting to make its way up. But if you are always at $1.14 and never going any higher, well, there's one, it's a radio investment. I don't think I can say the name online, so I won't say it. But there's a satellite radio that I made initial investment in. Somebody told me that's going to be a good investment. I made initial investment in and lost money immediately. So I decided, you know what? I don't know. My dad stayed in. My dad lost it all. You've got to look and see where your benchmark of response is demanded. Everybody's a different type of investor. Some are low risk, medium risk, and high risk. If you're a high risk investor, then you're looking at immediate gains as quickly as possible. If you're looking at a medium, then you still have to see gains. If you're a low risk investor, then you're going to take a long time, and you're okay with a long time. I'm not a long time investor in that aspect of slow. I must see some level of response. When I have couples come to me for marital counseling, I give them a book. I say I want first chapter done. If they come back the next week, they haven't done chapter 1, then they never get another appointment. I don't ever give them another appointment. Why? Well, they don't want to actually help their marriage anyways. Because if they're unwilling to read a chapter in a book, they're actually unwilling to change themselves and bring transition in their life. So if I have somebody that I'm working with in leadership, and I see that I'm not seeing a return, like no return, I will give them a benchmark to hit in a short period of time. And if they refuse to hit that benchmark, then I'll usually retract from them. I remember there was one individual who I had invested in for 3 years. I'll tell you, it was Josh Fuchsman. You don't mind, I say. For 3 years, I was after Josh Fuchsman. Investing in him. And finally, I just didn't see any response. So I called up Josh on the phone and I said, by the way, this will be my last phone call to you. I'm here if you want me, but I'm not calling you ever again. That right there stimulated the response. I didn't think it would. I mean, I wasn't anticipating. But it stimulated a response, and today he's a board member at the church. He's doing well spiritually, I think. You know, we talk and so on and so forth, and I think he's doing good. Do I want to see more? Absolutely. Is he a good leader? Absolutely. Can he do more? Absolutely. Will I pull more out of him? Absolutely. Will he hate me? Probably, but it's okay. But you see, that's worth the investment. And I have had leaders, and I'll be honest with you, I had a leader who, when they came, they were excited. Woo! I haven't had this kind of teaching ever in my life. After 2 years, I watched them in the leadership meetings and in staff meetings, not engaged any longer, on their phone, not paying attention, not taking notes, where before that's what they were doing. So it's not that I was gauging them outside of what they had set as criteria of how they act out. Not too long after that, I realized that he didn't like me at all. I stopped investing in him before he ever knew it. Why? Because I saw that I wasn't getting a good response. I don't continue investing in people that will not respond. I don't have to see major gains, but I have to see gains. It's all money too. You know, you guys are in business for money. And if you see a leader that's not going to produce gains, that's money. And if you already have, I think they say, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's like $50,000 to $75,000 when you change, that was for insurance. So Lou Lamphere was telling me that when he would bring a new insurance guy in, they would they got a staple or a baseline wage for over a year with all the training that they had in them and everything like that. If that person quit after the first year, they would lose $60,000 to $80,000, I think was the number, in that vicinity. It was a large mass. He said, so every bad hire costs the company major money. And it's the same. It might not be money, but it might be people, your resources. You got to pay attention to the investment. Did I answer that or not answer that? Did I take too long to answer that?
No, I think that was a pretty good response. Your top 25.
Wasn't that?
Pretty much summed it up.
It is. It's good.
I think those 25 are, in my opinion, they're all summed up in one word that I gauge in my business, and that's attitude.
Yes.
If I have somebody that is chasing me all the time, wants my help, they're going to get my help.
Yes.
If I've got people that maybe have the potential, but I say, hey, I'd love to go with you on a sales call. They go, yeah, okay, but they never asked me to go with them. I'll invest a little bit here and there. So it's really, I think Jay would be the same for you. It would be attitude. If somebody's man at your heels wanting to learn from you, what's taking you 20 years, and that's the person that I'm going to invest in.
Yeah, good point.
And people that don't care, so be it. That's my gauge. Not only that, but I think Jesus gave us the parable when he gave the talents, right? He gave one to 3 different ones.
Yep.
And when he came back, the one didn't do anything because you're a mean guy, you're a mean boss. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to just hang on. And then everybody, the other 2 got doubled, I guess.
Yes.
So what did he do? He took away from the guy that wasn't really doing anything. He gave it to the
Top guy.
Top guy. And it's kind of human nature, at least for me in my business. Like I have 2 people that I hired at the same time. Well, the one's doing really well. I mean, she's constantly on my door. Hi, it's just me again. Okay, which is fine.
Oh, yes.
So when I make a deal, when I do a deal, guess who the deals go to? Because we don't have house deals. You know what a house deal is. Guess who I give the house deal to? To that one versus
Right.
giving to the other one. It's just because I know that she really thinks that I'm a smart guy.
You are a smart guy. I had this one guy say to me, he says, you are my coach. Far more educated than I was, actually. And I said, okay. And I waited. And I'm still waiting. They can say whatever they want. Doesn't mean they're going to follow through.
Yeah, I was going along. So when you're in the college scene and when you're in a church, sometimes you have people that they come along like in the college they're forced on you because they're in the program. So there were two. This was actually hit me while you were talking. I had two students. One, this kid came in with enormous amounts of talent. He comes from a tech background. He's been doing tech in his church, since he was like 12 years old, and had all this potential, but was absolutely not teachable. There was nothing I could do when I tried to correct him. I was the enemy. And in the end, he turned on me. Then I had this gal who she had zero, but man, she was a sponge. And I said, I can teach her how to run sound because she'll absorb it, and I can teach her to be great because she's ready for it. And she now works for Live Nation as a tech director. That's a multi-billion-dollar concert company, and she's extremely successful right now down in North Carolina. The other kid fired from 3 tech jobs.
Yep.
Yep.
But you became unpopular.
That was one of them that got me fired.
Yep.
Turned on me and got a crew against me. Yep. Like a rabid dog.
It's amazing how so many of us are afraid to not be liked. Get used to it.
That's right.
If you're going to really rise to the occasion and be who you're called to be as a true leader, you are going to be unpopular. You'll find, too, that it's very rarely gray matter. They either love you or they hate you.
That's right.
It's very rarely mediocre. It will be a love or hate relationship, and you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be okay with somebody lying about you. You've got to be okay with somebody misunderstanding you. You've got to be okay. And if you're not going to rise to your occasion, which means they are not going to rise to their occasion. You have people that you are responsible for to bring them to their greatest level of success. But if you're afraid of being misunderstood, you're afraid of being rejected, you're afraid of what people are going to be saying about you, you're afraid of becoming unpopular, you can not only help yourself, you can't help them. When you get on an airplane, stewardess gets up to do her thing, and she grabs a hold of that mask. She says, help your what? Help yourself before you put the mask on your children even. You've got to be okay with this. Because at some point in time, short point, if you're a leader, you are going to be really disliked.
It's probably one of the most difficult things, whether it's in business or in the church world, that fine line of being the supervisor or manager and being their friend. It's almost impossible. So yeah, you better get it in your head right now that you're not going to be liked. You can't be a friend and a boss at the same time. It's very difficult. And people that do it, usually they suffer for it.
They suffer. I did. First church. Pastor Mary Edlin told me, don't let them know you in the flesh, only in the spirit. I became best friends with both board members. And let me tell you, I got bit. I got bit hard. I've made that mistake only one other time since then and got bit. Know that you can't be their buddy. You're called to lead their leader. You can't be the parent and the friend at the same time. You can when they get older. But you need to lead people, which means you have to have a thick skin and a soft heart. Be willing to be hurt. No, you will become unpopular. No, you will be misunderstood. No, you will be lied about. No, that is your life. Yahoo! And some people will make a decision never to truly fulfill their destiny, their purpose, simply because they want to be liked more than they want to lead. I challenge you to be the leader. It is at times a very